Okay, so I'm going to talk about integrating telemedicine in pediatric myopia care, something which is very new and something which has literally zero studies. So basically, till now we've been talking about how to handle myopia in your clinic. But the real question is, how do we get to those patients or those children who have myopia and are not coming to you because they don't know they have myopia? And that is where the impact is. The problem is the burden of myopia is just going to increase. We've all seen this slide numerous number of times, and the reason it's out there, every speaker is talking about it, is just because we want to spread awareness that this is actual a problem, and this problem is going to just capital weight. So what is basically happening is this study which came out from Sydney, which said that in by 2050 every second child will be myopic. I'm pretty sure the stats have changed and it's much more now because of COVID and being indoors for so long. And if you notice, the burden is more so in Southeast Asian countries in Asia. So, like our previous speakers have pointed out, that Asian population is any which way more inclined to have myopia. Of course, one of the reasons are because of newer activity, more population, more indoor time. All of this leads to more myopia, the burden myopia more so with us. And as it progresses, we've already had a slide which showed how dangerous it can be and how you can have RDs, you can have glaucoma. And the less spoken about is the economic burden. Every child will require a glass per year at least, and that costs the parent and that costs the manufacturer. So the whole burden on the economy, it goes up much higher if you have more children wearing it and more glasses coming out which are more expensive. Things are getting more out of hand. So how do we target them? How do we manage them? That's where teleophthalmology comes in. And teleophthalmology, telemedicine today, it doesn't come alone. It comes with AI. So the conjunction between both of them is very important. And ophthalmology being a very image specific, everything we do is image specific, OCT, fundus photo, whether we do a diffraction, that's data. So all that data, that image together, if it's incorporated, that makes great for AI. Like that's all AI needs. So that's what we are talking about. That little zone which is undiscovered, which can serve the underserved population. So what is basically telemedicine? Telemedicine is basically getting remotely delivering health services to an area which does not have the health services or is not coming to you. It's as simple as that. So you're allowing patients to receive medical care who will be sitting, say, in some remote zone from here in Calcutta. So that's how it works. So key components are a good digital communication platform, remote monitoring devices, EMR or EHR that you may have, and a patient management system, because you don't want to lose this data that you're going to get from them. You need to show and you need to spread awareness, as we've been talking about. Let them know what myopia is, sensitize them, then give them the treatment that they need and they will benefit from them. And the benefit is cost effectiveness. Number one, you have to make sure that the economy is correct, and this is the best way of making your practice sustainable. Number two, improved access to care. Now you have a target audience. You can now send the message to them that, okay, if you need further treatment, you can come this way, rather than them coming all the way. Like literally nobody goes to travel 200 kilometers to find out if they have diabetes. Nobody goes 200 kilometers to find out if they have myopia. So once they're told in their school by a school screening, or they suddenly realize, then they come to a doctor to check. That's been the urban situation. Now when you put it in the rural side, when no school screening is happening, they may or may not know. That is the question mark. How much percentage is actually underserved? That's what we have to answer, and with that comes telemedicine. And the advantages of the effectiveness it will be seen in the next few years. There's a lot of studies on it as far as diabetes is concerned, glaucoma is concerned, but hardly any work being done in myopia. So need of telemedicine by pediatric myopia is very, very evident. There's a rise of prevalence in myopia. So if there's a disease, there's always an opportunity. The opportunity, then we have to do it. Challenges in traditional care access. Now, like I explained, not everybody can come 200 kilometers, 300 kilometers and find out if they have a glass number or not. We may assume that there's a optical shop or an optometrist in every zone, but that's not true. Impact of COVID-19 has made all the telemedicine part very popular and very effective. The governments have spent money on teleophthalmology, telemedicine. There are now bodies available which can guide you through this. And telemedicine has come out as a actual solution now. And there's evidence in various suggestions and evidence in various articles which say that yes, it can be used in myopia. So benefit of telemedicine is basically, again, increased accessibility. It makes your work more achievable. It makes your target population more sensitive. It tailors to your patient with AI in between. It even make it more patient specific. And it's time saving, and then you have a lot of family engagement because you can spend time doing chair time. Like suppose if I wanted to speak to the parent but I don't want the parent to be sitting in front of me, I can schedule a Zoom call with them. They come to that telemedicine department in that rural outreach, and I have a face to face with the parent right there instead of me taking a train or them taking a train and coming to meet me. So yes, it is, advances are there. And with the current scenario of having 5G and more accessibility, I think it's going to be more and more important as time comes. You have a lot of digital vision screening tools now available. You have smartphones which can find your refractive error. You've got the plus optic devices, the photo screeners, everything available already, and easy to transport, easy to scan. We have a lot of Arvind-based projects already there which are doing this. You have wearable devices now. You foresee a lot of, we already have cameras in our glasses. It's high time we may even have other methods of finding how sunlight is being tracked. Dr. Shruti has worked on a wristband which works on finding how much of ambient light or sunlight the child has been using. So all this data can be accompanied to find out where the child will be tomorrow, where will his myopia be. And this is all AI and machine learning, and that's where it all works. And there are a lot of question marks on legality of it, the data, where it will go out or not, and that's being answered slowly. The key here is to make it more transparent, that everybody knows what's happening, the parents know. Like ma'am said, take consents, and that consent can be in local languages, and maybe a Delhi doctor can treat somebody who's in Maharashtra. So that may happen, and that is how we foresee the future of telemedicine and ophthalmology, and let's see how it works. And a lot of research has been done in different streams, and we are now more inclined to using this as a platform of reaching the underserved, so that may work. Of course, there are a lot of challenges and limitations still, and there are a lot of questions about security concern, privacy, which has been slowly answered. And before I wrap up, just a few more slides about myopia management. Now, all we need to know is the important data here, whether it's the axial length, is it increasing or not, where you have now more portable ways of measuring the axial length, A scans, and your new softwares and smartphone apps also coming, which can help and find out exactly what the spherical equivalent is and how much the axial length is, and that can be used as data, and that's exactly where you bang on hit and find out what child needs what sort of prescription, and what child needs atropine, what child needs myopia control glasses, and how to go about it. Because all this data can be used, summarized, and then given to you, and then when you're having that chair time with them online, you can deliver the same. So a lot of new wearable apps are now available. You have new glasses coming out. Apple is coming up with a glass which is going to measure ambient this thing. Maybe there'll be an app which adds to it and find out an axial length by just wearing glasses. You never know how the future is. And in conclusion, this is an undiscovered zone, and it is, I feel, the future of pediatric ophthalmology. Maybe not now, maybe in 5 to 6 years, but we all have to be aware and use it at the right frame, at the right place, because India, like I said, has a great population, and that great population requires us to be more diligent and aware of the future. Thank you.
Excellent talk, Dr. Aditya. And the integration of AI into telemedicine is looking at exciting horizons ahead. Anything specific that you feel you have used or you've seen somebody using for myopia diagnosis, like diagnosing myopia in telemedicine?
So the IDX DR platform and the IART platform, which is basically used for diabetic retinopathy, can pick out images and talk about pathological myopia or early myopia changes. And what basically is happening now is there's a study which is going on where using a fundus photo, they're trying to find out if this child will have a progression of myopia or not. And that, I think, makes it a little more sensitive as well, even more than axial length.
Also, I think, this is not exactly telemedicine, but it can be, and it has been integrated and published, is again the Red Glow and, teaching your pediatricians on their vaccination schedules to do the Red Glow assessment and kind of picking up children with refractive errors is again something which we need to talk more in the pediatric conferences and teach the practicing pediatricians of your cities to diagnose. And again, it's a telemedicine tool where even photographs can be analyzed for the asymmetry in the Red Glow. So yeah.
Truthfully, ma'am, we have very few pediatric ophthalmologists who are trained. So by use of telemedicine, we can have non-pediatric, even non-ophthalmologists who are trained to take these pictures,
Exactly.
sent to a
So
center.
that's what pediatricians, yeah, exactly,
So
the child specialist.
I think in our community, how to reach the most important thing is that the pediatrician should be educated about
Absolutely.
it. They, at each visit where the child is going for any vaccination or any regular flu checkups, or they should be a system where at least their visual acuity is determined. Yes, or they should be guided that if the parents have glasses, then please get your child's first checkup done at least by 3 years of age. These have to be basically more, the pediatricians have to be made more aware. So I have involved myself in Delhi in the Delhi pediatrician group. We have a lot of groups there where I go and give talks on all these,
Awareness.
and that indirect give me referrals also, and then the parents are also educated through pediatricians. Yes, so they are more aware and they know about these things happening around.
Okay.
I think we'll go to the last talk for the session, which is community outreach.
How will you find out if a myopia? The
So
AI
the-
data? That's what you're asking about?
The definition, sir, would be more than -6.
Patients come with -3, -4,
Yes.
and everything is okay. After correction, vision is okay, 6/6. Then how we sense before
Yes.
myopia may worse.
Yes. So there are certain
What are any
Yes.
data for
Yes.
progression, myopic progression data?
So that would come when we have baseline axial length for all your patients. When you see that patient coming for the first time having a -3 glasses, documenting the axial length at that time and then following it up, say 3 to 4 months later, and or 6 months, and every 6 months, if there is an increase of more than 0.5 diopters myopia, or there is more than 0.2 millimeters increase in your axial length over a year, is defined as progressive myopia. The other sense factors that you can have is if the one of the parent is high myope, or the child has started with a higher myopia like -3 at a younger age group. Say the child is only 5 years old and has a long way to go compared to a teenager of say 14 years old, and if he is -3, then the rate of progression or the time that we have for progression is much higher in a younger child with high myopia. So those are the two very important prediction factors where you can say. And then special children, again I think that's a very important group where these children are not outdoors because of lot of social stigma. Most of the special children, the autistic, the ADHD children, are indoors. So less sunlight exposure, and to manage their behavioral disorders, more screen time. This is the target group which ophthalmologists are finding very difficult unless you are good at your retinoscopy. So that is a point where these are the sense factors where you can say, oh no, this can progress. So I think that's an important take-home message.
I have a question.
How should be the
And,
follow-up time?
So every 6 months,
Not
first
before
you
that.
do a early. You do a maybe in 2 or 3 months, check for the axial length, then 6 months, and then you do it thereafter. If you actually can predict that the axial length is increasing, ma'am showed a very good tool online also. You can put your data there if you want. Otherwise, if you can see the axial length is elongating, that means the child is going to go into myopia progression. That's where you have to intervene.
In your clinical observation, how much axial length in myopic progression in every 3 months? Have you any clinical?
Uncontrolled.
So every 3 months we really don't do or document the excellent.
yeah,
Every
yeah,
time the
yeah.
parents will not be.
I think that.
Yes. So see, the early age the child is presenting, the higher the myopia, and the third is how the progression is will determine whether the child will have pathological
Axial length we
myopia.
can calculate by a scan.
A scan. So see, most of the people don't have optical biometry or non-contact axial length calculations like the optical biometers. It's really not for general
A-scans.
A scan can
Basic
be
A-scan can
enough.
do it for you.
Yes, so we can do on A scan, but there may be a little amount
Have
of
you any
standard-
clinical ideas, non-madratic axial length calculation or madratic axial length calculation
No,
differ?
axial length will not differ on
Not differ.
pediatrics.
Does not differ.
No, no.
Does not differ.
Yes.
Now, I have a question that up to which age you will recommend that keto or 0.01% atropine? Up to which age?
So yeah, stopping is I think the toughest part here. Usual recommendation right now is at least give for 2 years. See how the progression is. Stop if there is rebound. Restart. I am seeing. If we are starting, say at 10, I'm seeing at least 6 to 7 years of atropine being used actually.
I am saying that I am general ophthalmologist.
Yes, sir.
But I have seen that pediatric ophthalmologists vary in their opinion regarding
Yes,
the
there's no
duration.
strict guideline.
Like
but
in
2 years
medicine,
minimum.
everything
yeah,
is
yeah.
grey, sir. And this in the grey zone of medicine, the criteria keep changing. Right now, what we are all following and what we are supposed to follow is 2 years of low dose atropine. If the child is still not, is still progressing, continue atropine forever and till 18, of course. And or else, if the child is controlled, stop atropine, reassess after 3-4 months. If you see a progression of myopia happening, restart the atropine. For lack of availability of higher dose of atropine, we also go for twice a day 0.01% atropine in the children who are not controlled by low dose atropine. Any
Yeah,
other?
so we had a discussion, lot of discussion on this. So even few of the pediatric ophthalmologists we here as a team have discussed about that. We don't abruptly, suppose the child has taken for 2 years, we don't abruptly stop and wait for the
stop.
we gradually taper.
Gradually
So initially till last year I think I was following that abruptly stopping atropine after 2 years, and I saw a lot of rebound happening. Yes, from last year, since the time I have started doing a tapering dose, like first give everyday dose, once a day dose, then start giving alternate day, then twice a week, and then once a week, and slowly taper off over a period of 2 to 3 months is what I am following. And till now I have not, so it's just 1 year. I'll eventually know how the rebound, whether the child is showing or not. It's still a big question, but that can be done. So we are still
Okay.
studying all this.
Okay.
It's all under.
And one other question, but that is exactly not related to it. That in my setup, I saw many patients now it is 24, 25 years of age. Still, they have power refractive error is not controlled, and I observed it within the last 3 years or so.
You're
So, and,
absolutely right, sir, in your observation.
It was not seen earlier.
Absolutely.
But on the part of patient and parents.
So I think this is again something which needs evaluation. We are seeing even in the early 30s progression of myopia, something which we used to never see. And I think screen time
I
in
think,
adults
yeah.
also needs to be evaluated.
It's all screen time, mostly excessive near work, where we are all into digital gadgets and everything, which is causing all these problems. We still need to study further about these factors.